On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
This episode is dedicated with great respect to the memory of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, who died last week. And whilst we're on the subject, I was appalled when I saw the number of complaints that the BBC had received that because of their coverage of His Royal Highness's death, people had had to miss an episode of MasterChef. Well, as far as I'm concerned, people like you can go fuck.
I really like the old credits.
This is Bonaparte's gull. It's a member of the Laridae, found mainly in northern North America at 28 to 38 centimetres, that's 11 to 15 inches for those of you who still remember before the world went mad in length. It's one of the smallest species of gull. Its plumage is mainly white with grey upper parts. During the breeding season, Bonaparte's gull gains a slate-grey hood. The sexes are similar in appearance. Bonaparte's gull breeds in boreal forest across southern Alaska and much of interior western Canada, choosing more open areas such as treed edges of bogs, fens, marshes, ponds and islands. It typically nests within 60 metres or 200 feet in old money of open water. It winters along the coast of North America and in the Great Lakes, and is a rare vagrant to Western Europe and the Azores, where it generally associates with black-headed gulls. In 2017, a breeding pair was spotted on Iceland, and it is a very rare visitor to the United Kingdom. And yes, it is named after that Bonaparte, or a member of his family at least. The species is named for Charles Lucien Bonaparte, a French ornithologist and nephew to the former French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, who spent 8 years in America contributing to the understanding of the taxonomy and nomenclature of birds there and elsewhere. And now, if I may just digress for a moment, is it just me, or isn't there a marked resemblance between Napoleon I, Emperor of the French, and our very own Richard Freeman, cryptozoologist, explorer, and the man dubbed by Nick Redfern as being the Dark Lord of Gothdom? I've always thought so. And this is the first time I've ever had a chance to be able to share this thought with anybody else. Just saying. In popular culture, it turned up in one of the classic children's books by Monica Edwards. Operation Seabird tells the story of how the 4 children who lived in Romney Marsh during the 1950s, when the series of books in which the book can be found both written and set has the protagonists starting a seabird hospital when they find themselves having to deal with the aftermath of an oil tanker spilling. We can't remember the details because it was a long time since I read this, and even the reprinted edition cost well over 25 quid, but the children managed to finance their seabird hospital when one of their patients that sadly didn't make it turned out to be a specimen of this very rare species. They flogged the corpse for well-needed largesse, and everybody, except for the unfortunate Bonaparte's gull, lived happily ever after. It was not the only time that Monica Edwards dealt with our particular brand of cryptozoology in her novels. The Wild One, for example, dealt with the then current sightings of the Surrey puma, and Fire in the Punch Bowl dealt with, amongst other things, a relic population of pine martens in Surrey, something which has alerted me to the possibility of such things, and amongst others triggered me to write my book, The Smaller Mystery Carnivores of the West Country, back in 1996. So, I am still somewhat of a Monica Edwards fan, like a surprising number of CFZ people past and present, and I always keep an eye open for stories about Bonaparte's gull. Karina and I wrote this script together about a year ago, and it was going to be part of her series, Water of the Skies. But then she was taken seriously ill and died, and Water of the Skies died with her. At the time, there had been a number of sightings of this rare and beautiful visitor to the British Isles in County Wexford, Ireland, and we decided that it would be a nice idea to try and feature the species on Water of the Skies, so we sent links of some of the photographs to Gwyn Palmer, who at the time was being incredibly indispensable to us as a picture researcher, and I hope that once her baby is a little bit older, she'll be able to come back and do it again, because by goodness, my dear, we do miss you, although I do realise that baby Mohammed needs you more. She contacted the person who took the pictures, but we were all disappointed when he said that he would refuse the asked permission to use it because, in his opinion, the species has nothing to do with cryptozoology. We understand his reasoning, although we're saddened by it. Bernard Heuvelmans himself wrote, "The paradoxical, unexpected, striking, emotion-generating animals are what the cryptozoologist studies, and the further definition, I think, that a North American seabird patrolling around on an Irish lake is certainly unexpected, and we think that when the species was brought to the attention of a whole generation of young naturalists by its inclusion in a novel for children, that adds an interesting Fortean aspect to the story. But sadly there's a whole generation of people, both within and outside the self-styled cryptozoological community, who really don't understand what cryptozoology is. Heuvelmans was adamant that the study of monsters was teratology, and the cryptozoology was the study of real animals, unexpected animals. And by our own definition, we study all sorts of things that are not strictly cryptozoological, and it could well be argued, and yes, I'm doing the arguing, that Bonaparte's gull is one of those species. But it's sad that something that we have all worked so hard on for the last 30 years is so closely allied to pseudo-scientific nonsense in so many people's minds that reputable naturalists often try to distance themselves from us. From where we're sitting, it seems that the true cryptozoological community needs to police itself better and clean up its act. And now, for the third time, let's go back to my conversation a few weeks ago with Whittard and Matt Everett.
So, John, do you know who this is in the image here?
Yes, because I've seen the movie, but explain to the people who haven't seen the movie.
So this is Dr. Andrew Hammond from University, and he has been working on the tooth pit analysis, where they have learned a way to, they measure the space of your tooth and the depth of suspected canine imprints on carcasses and bones. So this is from a shoot from 2017, I think. And we analysed a jaw of a lamb that was found in Stroud, which I also filmed the morning after it had been killed. And here's a cool 3D graphic that I had made to sort of demonstrate the difference. You see there the canines are highlighted. What else have we got? Oh, that's actually reported sighting data. So for the time period that I analysed the sighting data for, so the reported amount of sightings, as you can see, it was less than 500, but they say only 1 in 12 sightings gets reported. So for this time period of about 3 or 4 years, you can see that there's likely 6,000 sightings, which is quite a lot, right? And there we have, Rick, the big cat man. You know who Rick is. This is from a reconstruction from Julian Dorr. So he founded the Dartmoor Wildlife Park. So he recalls of when he was about 12 years old and fixing his old rally bike, and there was an extra puma in the enclosure with his.
Guy who just bought me a cup of tea and I have been in with the pumas in that old puma enclosure. I don't know if it's still there, but Ellis Dorr was an old mate of mine, lovely guy. Shocking old rogue, but a really nice man.
This is from a reconstruction. Again, this is from Jolyon talking about how they were often called out by farmers and the police to investigate big cat sightings around Dartmoor. It's just a nice shot of the Quantox. This is from when the Marines were deployed in 1983. A lot of people probably don't know that they actually, the Ministry of Agriculture actually deployed Marines to hunt and kill what was responsible for all these lamb kills or sheep kills. That was interesting. Oh, and there's the actual lamb that I was talking. This was the day after we had the jawbone analysis was done from this animal. And there we have. We all know who this is John McGowan with his paw cut. What I can say is that we sent one of these casts off for 3D laser scanning. Are you able to see what I'm looking at now?
Yep.
Just a few seconds behind you.
Yeah. So this is the scan, and we had this 3D rendering done, and it's really good. You can see, you can zoom, you can rotate it, and this one here actually displays. You can see it displaying direct register, the back paw on top of the forepaw, the 3-lobe plantar pad. So this is something new that we did, quite special, quite expensive as well.
Yeah, I mean it's mind blowing, really. That cast is really quite something.
Forgive me for asking, but how much does something like the 3D rendering cost?
If you have it done in batch, you get a deal on it, but I think it was 150 per scan, and that will give you a 3D STL file. And also, what I was looking at it on them was an online viewing platform. Accurate. It's really accurate. How many microns was it, Tim?
48, I think the bloke said, wasn't it? 40 of a human hair is what it's accurate to. Which obviously, if you're talking really, it's quite precise, and to scale. And obviously, the advantage of having it in that 3-dimensional sort of rendered form in a computer file is if you want it to be appraised by other experts, you can wire to them. So that's really a handy thing.
3D graphics guy was complaining about how high quality it was. He said there was too many polys in it because it was making his computer struggle.
You guys have done stuff in that film that I've never seen anybody else do before, like those 3D scans and like the morphometric scanning of the inside of tooth marks. I've not seen that done before in a big cat documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's more modern. The 3D castings stuff, you're starting to see that in a lot of stuff. I mean, I recently watched Expedition Bigfoot, and they had a portable one now. It wasn't so big like this, and it was actually 24 more. It was more accurate than the one we had. It was half a human hair, and the primate expert, she was taking that in the field. So I guess that's just the technology. But the tooth pits, no, this is a first as far as I'm aware of on it, especially on big cats within the UK.
Here's a horrible question. if you'd had more money, is there anything you would have liked to have done that you didn't?
Yes. Where do I start? Yeah, if it wasn't self-proper budget, I feel like the expedition would have been insane. I would have been using lidar, uh, more better thermal gear for the expedition that we did. Better stock footage. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to find footage of melanistic cats. I think in the whole of the internet, apart from in zoos, there's only about 5 shots that I could find anyway. Various archive footage sites. So I'd like to have had more stock, and I would have liked to use more technology within our expert. And also some of it's been filmed in America, so we had to find people on a budget in America to film some of our US experts. It would be nice to have had a bigger budget to have done that maybe a bit better.
Yeah, Matt's just a control freak. He wanted to do it all.
If I had more money, I would have flown there and done it myself.
Of course you would. I would have been on the plane next year.
Where did you source the actors?
Some of the actors were sourced just from online platforms. Some people were my friends, and I had to do a cameo in it because my actor didn't turn up. Tim had to do a cameo in it because it's hard.
Yeah, we had
to get people.
casting dated that we had to go in front of the lens at some time.
Tim's mum's in it.
Yay for Tim's mum!
Yeah, and we also had our British celebrity in one of the reconstructions, which Tim managed a story about that as well.
Yeah, I woke up one day and there was a video message from Paul Cooper from this country, who plays Martin Mucklow, the dirty peeping bastard on this country. And my mate had personalized video message, and among other things, he's there and he says, "Tim, I understand you're into cryptozoology, but can I just ask, what?" And I was like, what is this? Completely bamboozled to find this when I woke up. And that was the start of with Paul Cooper, who has an interest in big cats, not massively, but he's local lad, Cirencester, and as well, I don't think there's a person in Britain who's not been sort of subject to a drunken conversation down the pub or whatever over the years. You hear, you read it in the paper, it's on the radio, so we're exposed to it. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a laugh. I'll help you out with that. He was very gracious and agreed to be in one of our reconstructions. And he was a lot of fun to work with.
They also did a spoof little video on the subject as well.
Yeah, there's a spoof clip. It was a deleted scene from this country that never went in. He is sat at the dining room table talking about the kitchen table, I think, in our house, talking about the local legends of the big cat. Very comical. And watching that, like, I can see why people take the mickey out of me and you occasionally, Matt. We do get the ridicule. It's hard not to sound like a bit of an eccentric when you're talking about beasts in the woods and these kind of campfire legends that people like to scare each other with.
How did you go about finding the witnesses? Because they were a different bunch of... Most of the other documentaries I've seen on the subject have got the same people in it. And you had a whole bunch of new witnesses that I'd never seen before. How did you find them?
Well, it's been going for several years, but you'd have to thank Rick Minter for orchestrating a lot of this, because of within that network is where a lot of the evidence was sourced, the photographic video evidence, and some of the witnesses. A couple of the witnesses I found myself just from, when I saw my cat, typed it into Google, who had like a little blog going, like Alex Bowler, and he recalls his experience from 1984, so similar to beasts, and not 20 miles away from that location as well. So that was another person. And obviously my own experience. There's no shortage of witnesses. I mean,
no, I think I pulled a couple of names out of the papers, and like Rob Guest, he was probably my crown in terms of eyewitnesses. The guy who worked as the manager of the Forest of Dean. The manager of the Forest of Dean, what a job! And yeah, so that's quite a seminal eyewitness. I was pleased to get hold of, and again, very gracious and very helpful, and credible as well.
Whilst we're on the subject of Rick Minter, I read something online claiming that there was some big feud between me and Rick. No, there isn't. Read my lips. I'm very fond of Rick Minter, and so was my late wife. We met him, the two of us met him at Big Cat Conference, and he was an absolute darling, and it was lovely to meet him, and I've been a fan ever since. So anybody who thinks there's any problem between me and Rick Minter, there isn't. Anyway, end of that particular interjection.
No, he's a class act. He's a gentleman. He's a gentleman, and his work speaks for itself. He produces a very podcast. His book's really well put together, and anyone who approaches him with a sighting to report or anything of that nature will be met with a very empathetic gentleman who's a good listener, takes things seriously. So he's a class act.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page, and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer and I are telling you, please remember to ring that notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when we've got another show. Well, as always, a big thank you to everybody without whom I wouldn't have been able to put this episode together, and that particularly this time is Louis and Graham and Carl. But also a big thank you to Maxine, Moffy, Matt and everybody else involved. We'll be back again next week, so until then, be seeing you.